Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, welcome to the show, everyone. Gonna talk a lot of mixed martial arts today ahead of the UFC Fight Night. Obviously, there's also a sideshow going on with Jake Paul and Ben Askren. I'll touch on that briefly as well. But first, let's just talk about, and this has been delayed for a number of reasons, the baseball season thus far. Last night, we had the Yankees lose a game to Tampa Bay at home. They're losing again to Tampa Bay right now as I'm recording this. But fans were throwing baseballs on the field in defiance of the Yankees' early season struggles. You know, when I was preparing for the baseball preview that I haven't finished recording yet, but, the truth of the matter is that, I didn't think the Yankees were nearly as good as what was being projected. And the reason why I say this is you don't know where the starting pitching's coming from outside of Garrett Cole. There's no clear consensus number 2 or number 3 starter for that matter. And the hitting is very contingent upon DJ LeMahieu and Gleyber Torres. And the problem is Gleyber Torres has started out in a bit of a funk. No one really trusts Gary Sanchez. Stanton is boom or bust. It's either he's taking out the boomstick and hitting it 500 plus feet, or he's striking out, or a weak pop fly. There's no consistency in Stanton's game. And Judge is relatively healthy at the moment, but that's a big if, because we all know Judge is probably only playing 80 to 90 games this year. So what you're left with is not so great looking baseball from the Yankees. Fans are getting pissed off. Why is Rougned Odor on this roster? A trade that no one can make any sense out of. We've got so many guys in the minors, and Brian Cashman trades for Rougned Odor, who is done, by the way. The man is completely done. I've joked about this with the Rangers fans that I know for a couple of years now. Odor's been done, and the Yankees just traded for him because the Rangers were paying his salary. It doesn't even matter. The more at-bats Rougned Odor takes is more at-bats that should be going to players in the minors for the Yankees. Bottom line, if the Yankees don't want to move Gleyber over to second and bring up a couple of guys, I don't know what else to say. This is very straightforward. Without Luke Voit in the lineup, LeMahieu should be in second. You could bring up another bat to play first base. DJ LeMahieu is useful at many positions. He's being wasted at first base, to be honest, with his range that he could be using. The Yankees are a mess right now. They don't look good defensively. The offense is anemic, to say the least, at the moment because of the early season struggles. It's only been 14 games, but it's the same issues we've seen the last couple of years. Guys being incapable of hitting in crucial spots and holes in the order because there are guys with holes in their swings in prominent positions that clearly have not worked on any of the issues they've been dealing with for the last 18 months. The Yankees have holes in their games. It's that simple. And the Rays, even though they don't have the offense, they do have the defense and they do have the pitching. So yeah, the Yankees are going to struggle against the Rays because if they can execute 2 out of 3, it's still going to trump the Yankees when Cole isn't on the mound. It's not that hard. 2 beats 1. And the Yankees are only good at one thing, mashing the ball. They're not a great defensive team. And when Cole's not on the mound, they're not a very good pitching team. Again, people like to throw out these stats about why the Yankees are going to win so many games. and it's based purely on the offense. But when they have cold spells like this, all the warts come to the forefront. So yeah, we'll get to the baseball preview eventually, and we'll talk about it. It's not as though it's a panic situation for the Yankees and they got to blow everything up, but they needed to reconsider certain things in the offseason. I didn't see any sense bringing back Brett Gardner. It made no sense. He brings nothing to the table for this squad, unless you want to say you want to have a veteran voice in the clubhouse, but bring him back as a coach. Like there are so many other things they could be doing. With this roster right now, Clint Frazier's not getting regular time as he needs to be the dominant left fielder on his squad. It's like they're splitting time all over the place. It doesn't make any sense how the Yankees are being run right now. And people are expecting World Series this year. I'm sorry to tell you, folks, I never saw World Series out of this squad this year. I could have made a case for it last year when the Yankees had more pitching. They have less pitching this year with a questionable pitching staff last year. So why would I say the Yankees are in position to make a run this year when they have worse pitching? It's less logic involved in this. So it is what it is. That's kind of where things stand. Fans are going to be pissed off with the Yankees this year because they're not as good as hyped. Bottom line, they're going to win games regardless, but it's going to be a lot of hollow wins, in my opinion. And it's just as clear as day to me. So let's talk about the circus coming in, because we've got, Jake Paul is at it again with another circus boxing match. This time against former MMA champion Ben Askren. Ben Askren, as you may have last seen him, getting dusted by Jorge Masvidal in less than 10 seconds with a flying knee, thus leading to Ben Askren's retirement from MMA. Here's the deal. Ben Askren is a bona fide superstar wrestler, made his money for years in mixed martial arts, mostly with Bellator, just grinding people, taking them down to the ground, wrestling them, controlling them, and, getting to a victory by decision more often than not. Ben Askren, bottom line, cannot strike with anyone. He is a terrible striker. I'm not saying that any guy off the street can beat him up, but I am saying, 9 out of 10 guys in an MMA gym, if it was a striking competition, they're going to beat Ben Askren. Ben Askren is a terrible striker. He is not a boxer. So when this whole shenanigan came up, I looked at this and said, oh man, Logan Paul really, Jake Paul, oh God, I'm mixing up the Paul brothers. Not that it really matters because the Paul brothers are realistically interchangeable, to be honest, with their social media clout and whatnot. But Jake Paul is doing this whole bit, trying to say he should be taken seriously as a boxer, when in reality, there's no way you can take him seriously. But, at the end of the day, he keeps picking these opponents. I thought when Nate Robinson was signing up to fight Jake Paul, Nate Robinson had, at least some semblance of boxing training. Nate, as you saw him getting knocked out, literally looked like someone who had just picked up a pair of boxing gloves 3 weeks before the fight. Now, with Askren, yes, he's had some boxing training. It's just that he's never been good at it. So if we're talking about a boxing match, and this is strictly a boxing match, Jake Paul basically needs to keep distance and range and just pepper Ben Askren, and he's going to coast to a victory. He is a minus 150 favorite. I don't see how Ben Askren cracks him. He'd never had true punching power to begin with. To me, this is a circus fight to, get some eyeballs watching it. I won't be one of them. But, at the end of the day, if I'm being asked to make a pick on this, I have to say that it's gonna be Jake Paul beating Ben Askren, because when it comes right down to it, Ben Askren's just not going to be able to put up any pressure on Jake Paul. To be honest, this I mean, oh man, it's one of those where it's like even the betting lines are favoring neither guy to get knocked out. Like that's well, no, they're favoring Jake Paul not to get knocked down. Ben Askren is a minus 250 favorite to get knocked down at some point. But realistically, there's a very good chance neither guy gets knocked down. This just grinds out to a decision, and it very much favors Jake Paul in this regard, because Ben Askren is not a puncher. He is not a boxer. He is not a puncher. So you don't do boxing. You don't have KO power. What are you going to do in a boxing match? I don't see any avenue for victory for Ben Askren unless Jake Paul screws this up entirely. So my whole thing about all this is, this is a circus. Jake Paul needs to actually fight real competition if he wants to be taken seriously as a boxer. This is not a true boxing match. So I've already spent more time talking about this than I probably should have. But that's my take on all of this. Is you're going to see a relatively boring fight, and eventually it's going to come down to, Ben Askren needing to make something happen against Jake Paul, and I just don't see it happening. I really don't. So to me, this is pretty much a done deal. This is going to go in favor of Jake Paul, and it is what it is. I don't care. Anyway, let's get to UFC Fight Night. We got Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. Just kind of running down the card. You got a 5-round fight between former middleweight champion and Robert Whittaker facing perennial gatekeeper Kevin Gastelum. Gastelum is very much a live dog, plus 225 underdog. Whittaker is minus 286. Realistically, Gastelum is filling in because Paulo Costa had to pull out due to injury. And, Whittaker, I would not have favored Whittaker against Paulo Costa, even as bad as Costa looked against Israel Adesanya. Izzy can make a lot of guys look bad from a striking perspective. I just think that, Whittaker, he absorbs blows. He's going to be kind of punchy. He keeps both guys in it if you're a decent enough striker. And Gastelum's very much a live dog because he has the power to actually hurt Whittaker. My whole thing about this fight is I'm not entirely certain that this fight doesn't end up being a case where you don't get as much volume as we should see in a 5-round fight. I could see both guys being very cautious early and kind of managing their way through. So, with that regard, if you get a situation where both guys are just kind of measuring their shots, it's very hard to get a lot of scoring from a DFS perspective. So I'm actually going to be underweight on this fight from a DFS standpoint. I'm basically playing tournaments. For cash, I think you lock in both guys in the main event because I think they both can get there, and it's a 5-round fight. For cash, you're just trying to get to over 50-50 in cash. For tournaments, you're trying to win, and I just don't see any guy finishing the other in a 5-round fight. I think this goes to a decision, and I don't think this is necessarily the most exciting main event. Will I give the odds to Whitaker? Yes. But do I think Gastelum can pull off the upset? Without question. So I'll have some betting action on Gastelum at plus 225. I think he's a live enough dog that it's worth taking a shot at him. Just not going too crazy about betting on him. But I do think that would be the play here. But when looking at this fight, I look at this and say Whitaker's probably going to take this slow and methodical, and that's just not a DFS fight. In our co-main event, we've got Jeremy Stephens versus Drakkar Klose, and this is a very interesting one because I think it's probably going to be a very chaotic fight. I mean, yesterday at the weigh-ins, Stephens shoved Klose, and they basically they were almost at blows at the weigh-in. So I do think we're going to get some action on this fight. Jeremy Stephens is going to want to trade and bang. Klose is going to want to grind this down, but I think Stephens may actually get into his head because of that little scuffle and get him into throwing more exchanges. So this could be a very interesting fight from that regard, where Stephens is only a slight favorite. I can definitely see both guys taking this. Could this fight go to a decision? Yes, it very well could, but I think this has way more chance of being an exciting fight than the main event. So as a co-main event, I would give the advantage to Klose to get the victory here. Again, he's only a slight underdog. Actually, in some books, he may even be only an even dog. So even money. So not even a true underdog. But interesting enough fight that I definitely think you should keep your eyes out for. But from a DFS perspective, I'll definitely have exposure to both guys because I do think there's potential for this fight to actually finish within the distance. And that's what we're looking for from a DFS score. And if we're fading the main event, you got to start looking at some of these other fights lower on the card. All right, next up, we've got Alex Munoz versus Luis Pena. Munoz is the underdog. I don't know why, but I think Luis Pena is a very, very weak favorite here. He's only minus 148, but I honestly think pretty much anyone that can take Pena down is clear favorite, and Munoz is a wrestler. So to me, 7,500 on DraftKings at a plus 120 underdog price, I am going to be very heavy on Munoz. I just think Pena's terrible, to be honest. So I think this is pretty much a clear-cut one to kind of go through. So it's just as simple as that. Next up, Abdul Al-Hassan. Oh, God, man, this is going to be painful. Al-Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. Al-Hassan, minus 335 favorite. Al-Hassan has blown so many matchups. And again, is such a powerhouse that he's either going to knock somebody out or get knocked out in under a good bit of time. So to me, this is a very clear-cut matchup where someone's going to get finished probably within the first round. So I will be on this fight very much. Even if it's like 150 entries, I think this fight's probably going to be in at least 80 of them because of just clear cut. Like one of these guys is probably going to end up in the optimal, and I don't know who it is. Al-Hassan is way too. That line is way too high in my opinion of Al-Hassan. I'll have some action on Malkoun because Al-Hassan is very hittable and he does not tuck in his chin. He is you can touch him up. So it's not as though Malkoun's very good. It's just the fact that Al-Hassan is very hittable. So definitely going to have a lot of action on this fight from a DraftKings perspective. Next up, Andrei Arlovsky still fighting in mixed martial arts, folks. Andrei Arlovsky was fighting in MMA for the better part of 20 years. I've been following him through college and into my middle age, and Arlovsky is still going. Now, does that mean he's still worthwhile watching? Absolutely not. Andrei Arlovsky usually puts on very boring fights, and to be honest, given his age and the amount of mileage on him, I don't blame him, because any hard shot he takes could very well be the last fight he takes. But Arlovsky's a slight favorite at minus 130. Chase Sherman, journeyman type of fighter, or like the UFC gives Arlovsky these fights with guys that haven't really established themselves, but aren't really true up and comers just yet. I don't really have a great lean on this fight. Arlovsky should take it to a decision, but it's not going to be a lot of volume. So to me, this is a walk away fight. So I'm passing all around in all formats. Next up, Bartosz Fabinski versus George Mearshart. Mearshart, slight underdog. Fabinski, slight favorite. Both are going to be very much in the playbook for DraftKings, because these guys very much can put up high scores on DraftKings. Fabinski is a wrestler who just keeps going for takedowns, and with DraftKings' new system awarding control time, Fabinski should score very well on DraftKings. So I like Fabinski. Mearshart also can strike and grapple. So Mearshart, without question, is a decent price. Inside the distance is the most likely play here. If I was going to bet on it, that's a minus 110. I definitely think these guys can bang and finish each other. And I think both of these guys can end up in the optimal. So to me, this is clear cut. I'm going to have exposure to this fight along with what we've got going on with Al Hassan and Malkoun, and kind of go from there. A women's fight between Tracy Cortez and Justine Kish. Honestly, a lot of these fights can just go to decision. I don't really have a ton of great takes on some of these fights, so this is going to be one of them. Cortez should win, but it's going to be a lot of takedowns. I just don't see a lot of value in this one, so I'm going to take a pass on this all around. Next up, Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino. This one is basically a lock button for all tournament lineups. I've got, I've talked about the others, but this one definitely is going to have a lot of action involved between Romanov and Espino. So one of these guys will end up in the optimal. I think Espino, as the underdog, has a little bit more edge to him. So I'm going to lean more towards Espino, but I wouldn't be surprised if Romanov takes him down and finishes him on the ground. But should have some interest in this fight and exposure to this fight regardless. So this one definitely I would be focusing on. Just letting you guys know, this should be a fight you should be targeting quite a bit in your lineups. Tony Gravely versus Anthony Birchak. Gravely, high-level wrestler, going to take this to the ground. Minus 335 favorite. He's going to win this fight. Take it to the ground and pound him. This one is pretty much if Birchak wins this fight, I'll be honest. It's going to break the slate. I just don't see how. Gravely, 9,400 on DraftKings. He's going to be able to get him to the ground. He gets this to the ground. This one's Birchak. No takedown defense, and not good off his back. No real submission chance here. This one's pretty much a done deal. So Gravely's basically a lock in my lineups. Next up, Jessica Pena returning after a 4-year hiatus to fight Lupita Godinez. Godinez, 9,200 on DraftKings. Don't like the price. Minus 305 favorite. Again, a lot of this is based off of Jessica Penne not fighting in over 4 years. I got to think there's some factor of being rusty in there. But Godinez, I really haven't seen a ton of in terms of striking. Again, it's really hard with these women's MMA fights to really see dominant strikers finish fights. So I'll have some exposure to Godinez, but not a ton. I could throw her into a couple of parlays, but should be a win, but not expecting anything tremendous here. And then the first fight of the night, Dakota Bush versus Austin Hubbard. Slight lean towards Bush, plus 150 underdog. I do think Hubbard can win this fight without question, but from a DraftKings perspective, 7,300, you got to start being able to fit in salary. And then from a betting perspective, if you're taking all favorites, you'll win some money, but you're not going to do a whole ton. So I'm going to favor Bush in some of my bets here, and definitely he's going to be in my GPP lineups for DraftKings. So that about wraps it up for UFC Fight Night tonight. Again, I like Gravely, and I do think you need to have exposure to the Romanov-Espino fight, as well as the Fabinski-Meerschaert fight. That's where you're going to get action. And, of course, with Al Hassan and Malkoun, definitely exposure to that fight as well. And then, we'll see what variants we get with some of these other fights, but that's where I think you got to kind of lean towards when building out your roster. So that's going to do it for me today. But enjoy the fights, everyone, and best of luck to all of you.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.